I've said it before, I'll say it again. Very soon, very, very soon, virtually all of the new cars that we buy, especially if they're EVs, are all going to be coming from China. China is going to pretty much dominate the auto industry, just like it's actually dominating most technical industries, production industries, your phone, your TV, whatever it is that you use in your home. Most of it is made in China, and that's almost true of the car, and soon will be true of the car. And the Chinese invasion is continuing unabated. If anything, the onslaught is actually being ramped up. Why is it being ramped up? Well, there's a very good reason for that, and I'll explain right after this.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
So all you have to do is look at some of the reports that are in the news. I'm just looking at a summary of reports from the news agency Reuters, which of course covers this sort of stuff extensively. Actually, it's quite interesting because if I sort of go back into the history of automotive trade, particularly in America, and there was this history that had previously of trying to block Japanese imports in order to protect American car producers. Well, history's kind of repeating there, really. And this time it's not just the Americans. US and European politicians are hitting the panic buttons over cars made in Asia. Which is an interesting way they put this here, washing away their national champion automakers. I mean, we're talking like in America, we're talking like the big three. We're talking about like, Ford, GM, and well, what used to be Chrysler is now part of the Stellantis group, which is a global group. So the problem here, what's happening is that the Chinese car makers are basically ramping up export. And the reason they're ramping up export is because at the moment in China, their production capacity, this is for the automotive industry, automotive trade, which of course has grown massively over there, like in a very short space of time. And of course, because they've started from nothing, this is why they have been so good at dominating the EV market, because the EV market required completely new setups. People think that it's an easy thing for the car industry to transition from 130 years of building internal combustion engine cars over to electric vehicles, but it's not. There's an entire, infrastructure that has to be created that supports that industry, that supports the assembly and the manufacture of those sort of vehicles. Of course, China didn't have a huge legacy manufacturing base. They actually had manufacturers like Volkswagen that used to do a lot of manufacturing in China. They learned very quickly from those manufacturers before basically creating their own industries and taking over. But what they were able to do was, because they were starting in a generation where we were already looking at EVs, they were able to then tailor all of their efforts towards that sort of thing. And they managed to ramp that up and pretty much dominate that sector already in this sense. Regardless of whatever, you may think that Tesla is the world's leading sales for or seller of electric vehicles. But actually last year, BYD, the big Chinese firm, actually overtook them. I think at the moment they're neck and neck. I think they're go up and down, although, Tesla apparently is really struggling. So I think it's very likely that BYD is going to win that out very easily. So they were geared to do that. So that's why they were in a very solid position to be able to do clean technology, new technology, vehicles, better, quicker, and in bigger numbers than anyone else, and which is what they have done. But what's happened is that for their own market, they've reached saturation point pretty much already. And what they're finding is that they're running at about 70% capacity. So they're already they have built too much capacity for the number of vehicles or the number of products, units that they actually need to build. So they're running about 70%, which, if you listen to them, they say, oh, that's not too bad. But if you listen to commentators around the world, they say, well, 70%, only 70% capacity. If you're only using that much, then that's not enough. That's a big amount of redundancy, 30% redundancy there. So what to do? Well, build more stuff and export it. So this is inevitable. It's like, well, we've got too much capacity, we need to export this stuff. And the reality of this is, and of course, the other thing I forgot to mention, which it says here, that the whole market has kind of snubbed a bit in China. So China obviously has had a boom, a massive boom. Huge cities have, have literally blossomed up out of the earth from nothing. It's just absolutely incredible. I think that the level of city building can only, I think it can compete with and maybe surpass the likes of something like Dubai. When you consider Shanghai and Beijing, I think they've, even outdone the GCC in that sense. But what's happening now is that China's sovereign credit rating has been cut to negative recently, citing risk to public finances as the economy faces increasing uncertainty in its shift to new growth models. So the revision reflects, this is Fitch's revision reflects the more challenging situation in China's public finance regarding the double whammy of decelerating growth and more debt. This does not mean that China will default anytime soon, but it's possible to see credit polarization in some local government financing vehicles. Obviously, a lot of this stuff, a lot of these industries were subsidized and financed by the government to get them off the ground. So China's not in trouble, but it's that tremendous acceleration they've had is not tremendous anymore, put it that way. And so because of that, but they still have the capacity to build all these things. They still have the materials they've already built the manufacturing plants, so they have to build them and export them. And as such, this is a really interesting story, also on Reuters. China EV export boom fuels surge in demand for new car-carrying ships. That's extraordinary, right? So Chinese automakers and shippers are ordering a record number of, what's going on here? Somebody's doing some building work and grinding something, which I'm now breathing in. China automakers and ship carriers are ordering a record number of car-carrying vessels to support a boom in EV exports. Well, boom, you know what I mean. According to data, this puts China on course to become the world's fourth largest shipping fleet by 2028. China is currently the 8th largest shipping fleet with 33 car-carrying ships. And Japan is actually the world's largest with 283 ships. Norway is 102, South Korea is 72, and the Isle of Man, wasn't expecting to see that on the list, Isle of Man is at 61. But Chinese companies have 47 ships on order. That's what's going on. And the buyers of the ships include people like SAIC Motors, Chery Automobile, and of course, the aforementioned BYD. So, yeah, so that's a pretty clear indication of what's happening there. Not only are they building more, not only exporting more, they will say, well, we should also own the ships that export these things. Don't forget all of this. Whenever we talk about trying to get climate change under control and why we should switch to newer, cleaner cars in order to do that. But don't forget all of this manufacturing, all of this creation of manufacturing plants, all of the sourcing of the raw materials, and now the building of new ships to carry these vehicles, plus of course the emissions of the shipping fleet, which if you look it up, it's actually amongst the largest in the world. It's just from I think, what was it, the 14th or something? I'll probably get this wrong, but like X small percent of ships in the world emit more than the entire global car park. So that's a sort of scenario, and they're getting another 47 ships. So think about that.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. Are you enjoying the video? Well, make sure you've punched the like button. It helps.
Plant closures have pushed China's auto sector capacity utilization to 70%. So a top official of another industry trade group, like I said, said that the is less than ideal for automakers. So the other thing that they're doing is, of course, they're still racing ahead with their development in technology. Like I said, this is a field that they've come to dominate, that they're pretty much rocking and rolling in. They know what's what. The big thing around the corner, we've already seen press releases recently from Toyota, who were talking about having solid. We know that Toyota has been working on solid state batteries with a partner. We know that Nissan is looking into. We know the Honda, of course, also is doing that. Nissan is doing that. But now we've got Chinese EV startup brand Hyper. I mean, I say startup, but it's not really a startup. Hyper is actually GAC, which is one of the big companies out there. GAC Aeon's Hyper brand said, I think this was last week, they said they have finished their research and development on all solid state batteries that will be used in hypercars. And by hypercars, I don't mean one step above supercars. I mean hyper as in the manufacturer Hyper in their cars. It will be used in their cars in 2026. 2026, that's what they're saying. 400 watt per hour. I'm sorry, watt. Get this right. 400 watt hour per kilogram solid state batteries will potentially give 1,000 kilometer. That's about 621 mile. 1,000 kilometer range, 621 mile range. Even if you take away the X% of optimism that you normally get with these, quoted ranges on EVs, you're talking of a car over 500 miles, which is more than most fuel tanks would do. And plus, they're quicker to charge. So solid-state batteries enabled improved safety, a longer lifespan, and faster charging compared with conventional lithium-ion batteries. So, however, there are constraints in raw material availability, and there are intricate manufacturing processes, but that's economies of scale, so they'll figure that out. We always knew that solid state would be a game changer, just like if you've ever used solid state batteries in your laptop, for example, or solid state hard drives, stuff like that. You know how much quicker, faster, more reliable they are. So they're already onto this. 2026, 2 years from now, and they're going to have even more attractive, viable products. So this is I'm not saying that this is a concern. I'm not one of these harbingers of doom saying, oh, you're going to be taken over by the Chinese, but I'm just saying that because I'm not in favor of this exemption processes where you exclude manufacturers, exclude products in order to protect home products, because all you're doing then is you're compensating for the inadequacy. Maybe your home product is not as good, and maybe that's why you're doing it, right? And actually, that's what I believe happened in America. So when they finally did get rid of the protection, then the American car makers had to up their game, and their product became so much better. People used to laugh and joke about American cars. The drivetrain was never in question, because remember, America is a big country, so the drivetrains are always engineered to do mile upon mile upon mile with no problem whatsoever. That's why the engines were, understressed, overcapacity, over-engineered to an extent. But the rest of the car would fall apart, because the quality and everything wasn't all that great. But then that all changed, So I would say that, 90s, 2000s, 2010, particularly in the last couple of decades, the product from America has been fantastic. 5 years ago, I was still in Dubai. I was reviewing a lot of American cars, and the quality was unquestionable. I often cite the example of a Dodge Charger Hellcat that I reviewed when it was launched. There's a bright red one that I reviewed when it was launched. It was launched at a media event at Yas Marina Grand Prix circuit in Abu Dhabi. It was thrashed around the circuit, all day long for a day, 2 days, whatever. Then it was on the fleet for about a year. Every journalist, including myself, had our wicked way with that car. At the end of the year, they actually contacted me because they knew how much I liked it, and they said, we're about to defleet it. Would you like to have it for a bit? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I was expecting this thing to be rattling and falling apart and buttons not working and creaking and moaning. It wasn't. It was as good as I remember at Yas Marina circuit. So all of that abuse, the only thing was they needed new tires, which wasn't such a bad thing. It definitely needed new tires. But other than that, it was as good as the first time I drove it. So it was great. So anyway, so my point was that, they definitely had to raise their game. So I'm not necessarily in favor of, this kind of protectionist policies, because, that means that people don't improve their own product. But on the other hand, we've got to think about the fact that, when we talk about climate and climate change, and, we're trying to reduce our carbon footprints, well, all of this is part of our carbon footprint. And we do really have to think about, ceding control in the sense of what we have seen in the global climate in terms of the politics of the world stage, where sometimes it's not such a good idea to be so dependent on other countries. We've seen that recently with our oil and our gas supplies and stuff like that. And here we are basically relying on China for all of our products, from the phone that I use to the laptop that I use, probably the GoPro I'm using, I don't know where this is made, probably, to very soon the cars that we all drive. And I think we should probably have a little think about that and how to tackle it. And maybe we should just stop buying new stuff. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll catch you again soon.
Check this out, guys. It's my book. It's my first novel, and it's written for car fans like you. It's a fun political action thriller. It's full of cool cars and spectacular action. Get your copy now at Amazon.com.